Hi everybody, I'm continuing my updated series on all of the core fighters from Street Masters Rise of the Kingdom. This time we are looking at Megan. She is another complexity 1 fighter, which means you'll have a pretty easy time figuring out how to use her. She uses chi cards the same way that Kyoryu had Tempest cards, but hers work a little bit differently. She has, as you can see in bold, the channeled keyword, and these are not feints, these are not exhausts, these are not actions. These are effects that are triggered by another effect on a different card somewhere else, and typically they happen for her on her tactic cards. Let's take a quick look at her normal side, and we'll talk about how this affects the chi cards as we go on. So from her normal side, you can see she has a health of 16, which is a little bit on the low side, but she's going to have really high defense. That's one of her main flavors, is being able to generate a lot of defense tokens. But she also flips really fast. As you can see, she's one of the quickest to flip at only 4, and she does kick attacks. So if you did pair her as suggested with Kyoryu, it's in the demo mode if you checked out this game on Tabletop Simulator, the two of them, and you'd be able to punch and kick all to your heart's content. You're going to generate a lot of kick defense tokens, and you might be able to use those for various things as you go through, and you'll just basically constantly be on your flipped side, on the charge side. So that part is nice, but what does it mean? Well, on her regular action, she can do an attack, Feat of Fury, and she will resolve a single channeled effect on a chi card, such as Barrier of Will. Her channeled effect on this card is to heal, which means she has consistent healing. Every time she does an attack, she can heal a little bit. So in addition to having great defense, she's going to be able to last a long time even if she has fairly low health. Where is she getting these defense from? Well, Barrier of Will, if you're able to get it out, is going to give you a random defense token at the beginning of your turn. So when you're pulling a threat card, don't forget you got to roll one of those white enemy dice in order to give you that random defense token. Additionally, you can exhaust and give every fighter, including Megan, all your allies, everybody that's there with you, a defense token of your choice. So that's at least 2 defense tokens every single round without even using your action. So that is a wonderful, wonderful bit of defense, and that will be multiplied by the number of tokens that are given by the exhaust function. And if you have 3 other players, they all have allies, you can be giving the table 8 extra defense tokens every single round. But chances are you're only going to play with 1 or 2, and that's still 2 to 4 extra if you have allies there on the table with you. So she is a powerhouse, and if you don't have allies like Chan Chan, Pux, or Lotus, then she is another great member that is going to consistently benefit your team. One quick note, just in case there are any arguments at your table, it says it is a defense token of your choice, not the choice of the other players. You can offer that to the other players, no problem, but if you prefer that they have a punch instead of a kick, it says your choice and not their choice. And you will notice that all of her tactic cards have stars on them, so you only can have 1 out at a time, which makes Stage Dive, you can only have 1, so you're only going to get 1 kick damage every time you deal an attack. After this, you can discard the card to deal 1 direct enemy damage to each enemy engaged with you. I don't think you're going to use it too often, but you might get a handful of stage dives and not have anything else to do, in which case you might want to run in and hit everybody for a single direct damage, maybe just to finish them off. That part is up to you. What I want to say is it says each attack, that's all of them, so not just the ones that are kick attacks are going to get kick damage. So if you do an attack card, then even if it's a grapple card, you're still going to do +1 kick damage. So you just add that on to whatever you've got going on. It would be in your best benefit because of this card to try to whittle away kick defense tokens from whatever enemy that you're working against, because this extra damage is going to go through, and even if you're working on some other crazy thing that needs to happen, then the most effective use of all this extra damage is to just keep as many kick defense tokens as you can on the enemy low. So there's lots of ways to do that, but that part's up to you. It has a channeled effect, so the last one was to heal. You may choose here to move up to 3 spaces and deal additional kick damage to the enemy. This is going to do as many chi cards as you have in play, so that's up to 3, and it is not an attack, it is dealing kick damage. So even if you did Feet of Fury, then you'll be able to attack for 2. Let's say you got 2 successes, then you would be doing a total of 3 kick damage, including stage dive, and then you would resolve the channeled effect. If you had just stage dive out, then you would do an additional kick damage. If you had all 3 of her tactics out that are chi cards, then you're going to do an additional 3 kick damage. So like I said, no matter what it is that you're doing, there's lots of ways that you can trigger a channeled effect. As long as there's as few kick defense tokens out on the table as possible with the enemies, you're going to be whittling your way through minions left and right. Then we have a very special card with projected chi in that it has an interact effect. What is an interact? It's not an action. It uses an action though, and it can be done anywhere on the table by anyone that has actions. This means that if you do this, if you put projected chi on the table, one of your partners that does not have healing of their own, or perhaps someone like Brandon who powers up with card draw cards in their hand, they're going to be incredibly benefited by having the ability to draw cards and heal damage. But it says here, gain 1 defense token from each enemy engaged with you. Well, who's the you? Is the you Megan? No. You is the person who's doing the interact. So as you move around the board and do different things, they're going to be the target of the interact. So if Megan's on one side of the board and they're on the other, someone like Gabriel who likes to be engaged with a lot of people, then him pulling off this interact, he'll be able to pull more defense tokens from them and gain the defense tokens. It's not just whittling it down. If they were surrounded by 6 enemies, for example, they could get 6 defense tokens, which would be great, and they'd also be drawing cards and healing. What does the channeled effect do? It says deal 1 direct damage to each enemy engaged with you. Who is you in this circumstance? Also the person who is going to be triggering the channeled effect, and the only person that can trigger channeled effect is Megan. So don't get confused that both of them say you. It is the person that triggered the effect. Everything in her deck has a star on it as far as the tactics, so you want to keep this out as much as possible, even if you have a handful. If you have to discard things, they don't have any feints, they don't have any other reason why you would discard these cards, so just try to keep them out and as much as possible. One of the other things that happens when you have all of these tactic cards just kind of stuck in your hand, you're going to speed up the rest of your deck. You're going to cycle through all of your abilities and your attacks much quicker on the next round or the next time you shuffle your deck, because all of the remaining tactics will be in your hand, and that will decrease the overall size, and all that will be left in that deck is those attacks and abilities. So you'll be a very fast attacking fighter in a late game situation. Now what happens when you finally do get to flip over onto your charge side, which is going to happen a lot? Well, you're going to attack, you're going to hopefully get some extra kick attack from stage dive, and afterwards you're going to resolve the channeled effect on all of your tactic cards. So if you have all 3 tactic cards out, you are going to be doing immense amounts of damage, especially specific kick damage. Should be able to whittle through and ignore all of that punch and grapple defense on the enemies, and you'll be healing and drawing cards and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So she is going to be gaining a lot from having those tactic cards out. Well, why am I reiterating this so often? You need to have them in your hand in order to play them. You need to use the mulligan rules. Originally, in the first Street Master's handbook, it didn't have a limit to the number of times you could run through your hand. So on this new rule book, they have said you can only do it one time. Do whatever you can to get every single version of the tactic cards out into your hand as much as possible, and you will not regret it. And Megan will be a powerhouse very early on when you need her to be generating those random defense tokens every turn. The quicker you get random defense tokens or anything that happens at the beginning of a turn out on the table, the more benefit you're going to be getting from that card throughout the rest of the game. Now let's look at what other kind of cool stuff she can do. We have Flying Knee, which is an ability, so it's not an attack. It does not get any additional kick damage from stage dive, and it does allow you to do 3 kick damage to an enemy engaged with you. Then you can jump away from them. So if there are any enemies out there, like say the Mountain General, that are going to damage you if you're engaged with them when it comes to your threat area, your threat turn, then Flying Knee is a great ability to use as part of your card action that allows you to do a little bit of damage and then get away if you had to move in close to the enemy to hit him in the first place. But then we do have a couple more attacks, and these are kick and punch attacks. Final Cut, and if you wanted to, you can continue to move based on the number of chi cards you control. So another reason to have those chi cards, those tactics out early. And Gale Force, which will allow you to discard to deal direct damage for each chi card discarded. You can only play 1 card per turn, so it's not like you can drop it back out. The chi cards that are out are far too useful to utilize in Gale Force, so I would mainly use it, except in certain situations where it's very extreme, to do a punch attack. If you needed to be able to do punch damage, then that's when it's the most useful. You will get some extra kick damage though if you have stage dive out. Just don't discard stage dive. Then we have Vaulting Kick, which is the reverse of Flying Knee in the sense that you are going to do a small bit of grapple damage and then use that to vault yourself to another enemy. So rather than get away, you're going to have to go towards another enemy, which will allow you to attack for 2 additional dice, and that attack will be a kick attack. So keep that in mind. You're going to start with grapple damage as you grab whoever it is and fling your body into another enemy, doing kick damage. So it will result in extra kick damage from stage dive. And you can move 2 spaces, but it has to be an empty space. If there are no empty spaces, then you're not going to be engaged and not be able to attack. So you might be able to move, but you won't be able to attack if you're not engaged. You do not have to attack. You don't have to do really anything. And if you just needed an extra move, as long as you could grapple an enemy engaged with you, then you will be able to move. It says then, so you have to be able to do the first thing to get to the second thing. But Megan doesn't just have to be a fighter. She can be an ally or a rival. If she's a rival, then she's going to be able to move around pretty well. And she's going to want to jump in the middle of the crowd and do that stage dive, dealing direct damage to you. So, I mean, you're not going to be able to defend it. You're not going to be able to gain power from it. It's something that's going to whittle you down pretty quick, even if you have a lot of defense, because chances are pretty high you're not going to have a lot of healing. So Megan is one of those rivals that you're going to want to get rid of pretty quickly. It shouldn't be impossible unless you're using another kick attack fighter, because she just doesn't have a whole lot of defense. But she will whittle you down, being able to do direct damage and hit and do an area attack basically. So that could hurt you pretty bad. Then we have her as an ally. She moves 3 and attacks for 3, which is nice. But then you get to move around yourself. So she is not only high mobility herself, she's going to make you high mobility, being able to deal 1 direct damage to each enemy engaged with you, or you get to heal damage. If you aren't a fighter that can heal damage, if you're someone like Clint that can't heal themselves, then it is amazing to be able to have someone like Megan around to be able to do that. She does not have to be within range of you to make this work. There is no restriction on that. So if she's on the other side of the board, then she could just be hiding out, and then you exhaust hiding out in a corner, and you can be healing from that while you're doing other stuff, maybe with ranged attacks, or maybe you're hiding in the corner. But no matter what, she is someone that can help keep you alive. So let's talk about stories. No trust fund. You're going to stage setup. You're putting Sarah O'Quinn as a rival into play, so you're not going to be able to have her as an ally as you go through the story. It's one of the things about the stories. It will tell you when to add rivals and take them away. But same thing with allies. If you're having too hard of a time, or if you're having too easy of a time, don't worry about it. Just add more. Whatever makes it fun for you is kind of the main rule. You just want to be able to have fun. So one of the things that you're also going to have to do is discard defense tokens to place onto the No Trust Fund card. So that is an interesting mechanic that gets used all of the time. If this is one of your first times running through a story, I would recommend not complicating it with a lot of other stories and just play through one hero story at a time until you get the hang of it, because you're going to have these kinds of extra rules. Now, since Megan can generate a lot of defense tokens, one of the things that will happen with her is you have to put them, it doesn't say that you have to use an action to do it or anything like that, and a lot of times you have to use an interact in order to use this kind of mechanic. But instead of dealing damage to Sarah O'Quinn, you can put defense tokens onto No Trust Fund, and that will get you the better ending, and that'll get you to Brotherhood's Bane. Brotherhood's Bane does something that not a lot of other cards can, and that is discard a gear card from play. It also has a nice exhaust, giving you even more defense tokens, which is awesome. If you're playing against the Brotherhood, you get to double it. So Brotherhood's Bane, there you go. The Feint is going to put this into the discard. If it said remove it from play, then it wouldn't go into your discard pile. It would just get removed from the game. So you can put this back out on the table, play it as a regular card. If you shuffle your deck and it comes back, it is difficult to say that there is any other way that you could pull a card like this from your discard and put it into your hand. I don't think there is another mechanic that'll let you do it without just regular shuffling. But in the future, if something like that exists, then it'll, if there's no specificity to the type of card you can pull, then you might be able to pull it that way. But otherwise, you're just going to have to wait for it to cycle. Same kind of thing for the penalty perk. If you put it in, you attach the card, and it says specifically remove this card from the game. So you have that information. It's not going to cycle through the enemy deck and pop back up. You got a one-time big spack of damage. You do not want Sarah O'Quinn as a rival. She has a big hammer, she swings in a big arc, and she does a lot of damage very quickly. She is a huge pain in the butt, especially if she's out on the table for a long time. So she does a massive amount of damage if you are not hitting her as quickly as you can. Now it says after Sarah activates if Megan is within 5 spaces. So it's only Megan is within 5 spaces. If you have another character, or if you have an ally along with you, then she is specifically trying to target Megan, and that is the best tactic to try to get rid of Sarah O'Quinn as a rival and not have to deal with this penalty. Finally, let's look at some options for allies that might be good matches with Megan. First up is Yinghua. She is able to discard the top card of an enemy deck. Well, one of the things that this does is it gets rid of cards from the enemy deck, things that you might not want to have to deal with. So even though you can possibly gain defense tokens of your choice for each copy in the discard pile, being able to get rid of a gear or some type of tactic card out of the enemy deck that you know is popping up at some point, every turn it's going to give you something that the enemy can't use. And Megan doesn't have the ability to do that for herself. So Yinghua is going to be able to help quite a bit with that. And it doesn't matter if she hits anything or not, you're going to be discarding. So keep that part in mind. Mr. Apple. I don't understand Mr. Apple. I don't understand the fascination that led to him being in the game. But what I do understand is you are a character that can generate a fair amount of defense tokens for people that are attached to you in one way or another. They're in your area, they're fighting with you, they're going to get defense tokens. What does that have to do with Mr. Apple? You can use any defense tokens that are on Mr. Apple as if they were your own. That allows your extra fighters, allies, anyone to be able to do that as well, because it just says a fighter within 3 spaces. As long as you are circling Mr. Apple, as long as you are providing him with those tokens every single round, you are going to be a little bit tankier as you move through the game. Lita. Doesn't matter which version of Lita you choose, if it's the Aftershock version or if it's the regular version, because all of them allow you to perform one interact action as if you were in Lita space. Well, interact actions, they don't necessarily need to be done in any particular space, and you have a very powerful interact action on one of your tactic cards if you're playing as Megan. So what that'll allow you to do is exhaust Lita. She can move 5 spaces, run away from wherever she needs to, gain random defense tokens if that's what she needs to do. If she's around somewhere and she can attack, great. But she can perform an interact which allows you to heal, draw cards, do all other kinds of cool stuff. So I think it's a win-win-win-win kind of situation if you pick any of these folks. It just depends on the type of mission that you're going to be playing. Think about where your difficulties are. If you had any problems playing with Megan, then maybe one of these cards will help you out and fill one of those holes that you otherwise are missing. And I think that's it for this episode. I hope you are encouraged to play Megan some more if you haven't already, and that you treat her as more than the Barbie doll she looks like. I hope in the movie version, as I think I said before, but I definitely thought, I think Jessie Graff would be a perfect Megan in the movie version of Street Masters. So you think about that. Who do you think you would cast in a Street Masters movie as your favorite fighter? Throw that in the comments. That'd be interesting to hear. Check back in. I will be trying to do as many of these videos as I can before I get too busy, and hopefully I'll finish it up before you need the next fighter. That's the next one you're going to play. You guys have a wonderful time. I also have another channel where I go through every single Kickstarter campaign in the board game space and RPGs and all that kind of cool stuff, and let everyone know every week what's available, it's out there, if something's coming back that maybe didn't make it, or whatever the case is. I cover blacklist titles every single time they come out, because usually they are on Kickstarter, and give you whatever news that you need. You'll see that in the comments, in the description. They'll link you to that page if you like it, and otherwise you might be able to hit it on a little quadrant of pictures that pops up at the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hit subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Share it with people that you think might need that additional help, or maybe share it with somebody who you think would like to play with you and you just don't know how to explain the game to them. Maybe it'll help them out.